And I think that's one of the hard things about fives too, is their intensity. And they're not intense in the way, say, an eight is with will or control, but there's like a kind of a like sometimes you'll hear people say that fives seem arrogant or harsh, and certainly we can just say things bluntly and be harsh, but I think some of that just comes across because we're fucking relentless.
Yeah.
They don't have a game. You like rough sex, and the next thing you know, you're being choked on the couch.
The Big Hormone Enneagram.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres over the 5-wing 458 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9 with a 1, 974 trifix.
What up? It's Emeka. I'm in an 8-wing 7, sexual self-pres with 854 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 369 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
Welcome to the Big Hormone Enneagram. We are doing What Sucks About Dating Each Type Part 2. We recorded last time shitting on 4s that we're going to add into this episode. And so joining us for this episode is my friend Corinna Bloom, and she is going to help us with 5, 6, and 7. So there's going to be a bit of a disjoint where there's the 4, and then she's going to be joining us for the 2. So hello, Corinna.
Hi.
And before we introduce, Corinna talks about herself, we have a few plugs. So first is mine. I have a session that I did with Gail Scott on the Enneagram Global Summit. And if you follow the link that should be included in the show description or on our Instagram, and you sign up, I get a little money, and it's free. If you sign up, I get a little money, so please do it. I'm introducing the types from the perspective of how they arise from the centers. The types are basically, they literally are the pattern or the interaction of the centers. So I do that with Gail Scott. And when this goes out, I think you'll have like 2 days when you sign up to listen to it. So please do. And then David's got some shit.
Yeah, I've got a new Patreon site, patreon.com/Ennea site, Ennea like Enneagram, and site like website. That's for the book I'm writing, which is taking a elemental, archetypal, kind of Jungian approach to the Enneagram and the Enneagram symbol. And as a Patreon member, you'll get some first looks and engage in conversation with me and feedback and stuff like that, and questions, and maybe contribute some ideas.
And we started a cool little thing called the Love Line. We got a number that you can call in to leave voicemails, comments, questions about any sort of romantic relationship questions. We haven't gotten a lot of people who've left messages, so please leave some messages. We're going to take care of you. We're going to edit it, and so it sounds great, and it's going to be part of the show. So if you want to be involved, to end up on the show, call 323-696-0647.
Because we want to be involved in your life.
We want you to be part of our process.
Okay, I'm hanging up now.
So,
we want to be a part of your love lives.
Your love lives. David,
Yeah.
did you say that people can get on your Patreon and they have to pay to talk to you?
Well, aren't I worth it?
I mean, it depends. What are we talking about here?
Well, anything you want, baby.
Okay. All right.
No.
Do they get to hear your mouth noises though?
There's that always.
Okay, perfect.
No, but it's like sneak peeks into the book.
Mhm.
And I'm, publishing a mini sort of excerpt from the book each week as
What
part of
about a
what you get
mini
with.
sort of excerpt from your bedroom?
Well, see, I didn't know you were going to go this far into all of that.
That's got to be the advanced, extra level.
Yeah.
All right,
I
let's introduce Corinna and have Corinna, if you could say a little bit about yourself and if you want people to reach you or not and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so I'm Sexual 5, it's not clear my wing. I used to be really super 4-ish, and I've been with a 6 for 15 years, who I've kind of absorbed. So really unfolded 6 wing. Um, I sexual probably like I'm pretty low in both self-pres and social. And so if you can be double low, that's probably where I come from. But I've probably had the most training over the years in social. So just because of having to modulate some of the issues that I'm going to talk about tonight. Um, I don't have anywhere right now that I want people to reach me. So I'm all
Okay.
set with that.
Yeah, Corinna and I were roommates for a short time, and we are good friends now. And so welcome, Corinna. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thanks. Good to be here.
I would love to be Karina's roommate. I feel like her voice, she could just read me a bedtime story every night.
Yes,
That'd be
that's
great.
what happened. Corinna would read me a story every night.
Yeah, because I love bedtime stories so much.
And Corinna, let's shit on some 4s.
Aha. Well, David's the only one who has dated a 4, and you, of course, yourself. So how about it?
Yeah, so I've been in relationships with 2 4s, and the thing that comes to mind in terms of the receiving end of dating a 4 is it's never quite right. Like the 4 wants a lot of connection and also wants their individuality, and so there's this constant the partner is never able to strike the right balance, and sometimes there's this experience of like incredible lovingness and like tenderheartedness and then incredible venom and acid. And, and it's like sometimes in the same day.
Yeah.
And like a lot of criticism, um but I think sometimes it has a very personal edge to it that sometimes the one kind of criticism doesn't always have. Like 4s know how to go for the jugular, like emotional
Yep.
jugular. And yeah, it's like you can't count on them, and I'm including myself in all of this too, but you can't count on them or me to like do normal relationship stuff. Like your sort of expectations of how a relationship should go in a normal sense have to go out the window. And some people are down with that and some people aren't. But maybe somebody's down with a lot of it, and then there's parts where it's like, come on, now you're not like you're okay, you're so special and exceptional now. It's like obnoxious. It's like
Hmm.
um yeah, that's what sticks out, like this never quite right. And it's like you can't, like, are they gonna play ball? Are they gonna like be the partner that they sort of have professed to be? Are they gonna be loving now, or are they gonna be hateful now, this kind of thing?
What are some of the like normal aspects of relationship that 4s just don't get on board with?
I mean, it can be anything. It depends on the individual for, but it can be like, all right, we're not going to live together as one,
Hmm.
silly example, or like almost anything that you like. People all unconsciously have a bunch of expectations for relationships, right? And so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, you're the male, I'm the female, or whatever it might be, or, like so. You're gonna do this, and I'm not, and I'm gonna do it like this. But it's like I'm gonna reverse that, or I'm gonna fuck with it, or I'm gonna, like I, as a male 4, like I do identify very strongly with maleness, and including that is like um, sort of male kind of relational roles,
Hmm.
being the active one, and whatever. And um, but I'm not like, I don't have a consistent schedule. Like I'm not like a provider energy at all. Like I think I'm more fun and interesting, but I'm not like going to be providing like being like a source of help, like income.
Yeah.
Like or like
Right.
I'm not
Right.
gonna go to bed till 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'm not gonna wake up and do normal stuff. I'm not, I mean, it's like all dumb, and that's just what's coming to me. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um, there's always a way that I have to be an exception on, like, and I don't know I'm doing this consciously, but I'm just sort of
Right.
like, well, these are my preferences. This is what I do and am, and it's just obnoxious.
Hmm.
Like everything feels like it's a battle about my own individuality without, like, I don't even know it as like consciously as such, but I bring that kind of energy to like a lot of, like, compromises are kind of hard in that way. It's like I think I'm pretty easygoing about a lot of stuff, but there's a certain line where it's like, no, I'm not going to smile in your fucking picture, or no, I'm not going to, like, I will be in like, there's a picture with like a whole family or something, like I'm going to not smile in it, And like
Yeah.
going back till I was a child, I'm not smiling in photos. And it's like that's just how it's gonna be. And that's a dumb example, but there's things like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. You're just not gonna play ball if it's crossing, the lines on things that you just don't do.
Right. And it could be totally arbitrary.
Mhm.
Like that's probably the most frustrating part for a partner is like again, I'm talking about myself and I'm talking about my experience with having dated fours. It's like it can be totally arbitrary. What is the line? Like, or and this is a good one actually. Like we're like really vibing, we're really into each other, but you don't eat like you eat shitty food, and it's like ugh, like you're just disgusting now, it's like like usually it's like an aesthetic thing, like oh there's some like you're into this
Right.
basic shit, or you're like whatever, it's like oh your taste in this is just horrendous, and it's like I know my taste in certain things is bad, but it's like it's not just having good taste versus bad taste, it's like oh you have that kind of taste, like you like this kind of
Hmm.
pop music, like I like some pop music, but it's like that kind of pop music is like horrific, like
Rejected
yeah,
entirely.
just like ugh,
Yeah.
I can't like because it's symbolic of something, you know what I mean, like it's symbolic of some kind of like character flaw. That's maybe a way to put it, is like everything is symbolic for four. So like you might not be tracking the symbols that the four is tracking and
Right.
making judgments based on the symbol.
Can you say
Uh
more about the symbol piece? Like,
yeah.
what do you mean by symbolic?
Well, so like everything is evocative of a mood or association or I'm trying to think of a specific example, and again, being a four, getting very concrete isn't like I have the mood of what that feels like, but it's hard for me to narrow down on the in a specific actual in practice event. But it might be like if you like, all right, it's like let's say you like country music, like I can be down with like certain kinds of country music that I feel like are like quote unquote authentic, like representative of like actual
Like,
people that actually lived in a country in the countryside, kind of thing, and like probably had some working class sensibility. But if you like shitty country music, like Kenny
Country pop.
Chesney country pop shit, that has all these like links with like the way people are such dupes about getting exploited by rich people, and like like just shitty sound, and I don't know, like it goes on and on and on about like how awful it is. It's not just like oh you have bad taste in music. It's like it means all these bad things. It means you're dumb. It means you're
Hmm.
um, easily fooled by total cheese. It means that you're uh, you're interested in this sort of up, like a lot of these country singers are actually like wealthy people that sort of cosplay as working class people.
Yep.
totally.
Like oh you're sort of like tolerant to that, like fucking tourist aesthetic tourism, kind of thing. So that's like a dumb example, but what comes to mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
that's an overt example for me because I have a specifically country music. I have a lot of associations, like a whole long tail of what that means. Like if you like country
Yeah,
music, like even if you like country music a little bit, I almost feel like at least 10 to 20% of you is this rotten thing that I, you know,
exactly. No, exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
no.
No, that's
like
your
there's a
forfix.
there's a part of you that's been infected with this thing that I think is just a rotten, festering disease.
Totally. That's it. Exactly. And it can be all kinds of shit that you have no idea. Like
Yep.
might be like what fucking neighborhood you live in. Like it doesn't it's stuff that's a lot of times beyond somebody's control. Sometimes it isn't, but they might just be engaging in an innocent part of something.
Yeah.
And you're just like, ugh.
And I recognize it's like just the meat. I recognize that some people, maybe they just grew up with country music and they don't even really identify with all that stuff that I'm associating with it. Uh, they might just like a few songs, but like it's such a full body disgusting response for me that I have all these other associations from it, and yeah, it's a really kind of unfair judgment, honestly.
Yes,
But
yes, actually, yes.
but it's
For
there
me,
nonetheless.
it's stuff like smiling family photographs in their Facebook profile.
Yeah.
nice normal people with plaid
Totally.
shirts on.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You should go check out some of my family's photos.
Oh man.
To
me, I
they
just-
all end up wearing plaid. I don't know why.
I end up wanting to machine gun those people.
Oh yeah, I know.
Oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's.
That's how
I mean,
bad it is.
it is harsh and severe over stuff that most people think is just silly or peripheral to a
Yeah.
person's character. It's like a doorway into their very soul, and I hate what I
Yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Like almost every time. And so, yeah, it's like there's a people describe walking on eggshells in terms of Fours moods, and like I mean that's like another thing to shit on about Fours is like they're so moody, but like the thing I
Mhm.
think you really got to watch out for is that how that judgment hammer can come down.
And I feel like people
case-
can sense that even like non-verbally.
Oh yeah.
I've noticed that, especially with threes, like because they're so tracking the
Got your
degrees.
number, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, the degrees of like they're tracking the degrees of whether you're judging them or not. And I've noticed that the threes that I've been with can somehow pick up that I'm a judgmental person, even though I'm consciously trying not to be that way around them because I know that they're tracking me and they're so sensitive to it. They somehow pick up that that's a thing for me, and maybe because I'm unconsciously being a judgmental piece of shit,
Again, I just wanted to say for the listener what we're talking about here. We're somewhat tangential, but me and Emika both have 4 of the 3 fixes, and John's obviously a 4, so we're just kind of tangenting on on what it's like, how on the spiteful 4 shit.
Yeah.
I'm just truly shocked that any of you are friends with me at this point. So
Alex is constantly pointing out my 4 stuff, like and she's got a strong 3 fix, and it's just like, man, that was negative as shit. What the fuck?
Yeah, and also I think it's important to distinguish for people. It's not like Fours just want people that are like all unique, like idiosyncratic characters. Like I like some people that are like very normal. It's like
Yeah.
I love like R&B. Like cheesy, like 112 or like I don't know, like Blackstreet. Like really cheesy, just like danceable R&B that's like very basic kind of music. And so it's not like, oh, it's only the most unique shit, but that's what makes it even more difficult is because it's hard to gauge where it's going to come
Right.
from.
Right.
Like I was saying to somebody that like I really like that kind of like old school R&B because that music is cheesy, but it's cheesy because but it's one of the places where like people can artfully sing and express like enthusiasm for sexuality like on its own terms. It's like there's a song by Mark Morrison called Horny, and and it's just like get horny, whatever. But it's sort of singing about the joy of being horny or like sex you baby, like I think that's like Jeremiah or something like that. Anyway, those kind of songs are like some of the few musical outlets that people have for like directly singing about sexuality in very explicit terms with like actual real passion, enthusiasm, and love for it. But it's got to kind of come through a cheesy lens. So like all that in my like foremind is like cool, that's good, like that because I have a way that it sort of like it makes symbolic sense. But then when it comes to like I don't know, like country music, I'm
owning
like,
cowboy
fuck
boots. Heaven
Yeah.
forbid.
oh yeah. Unless they're like dark country boots, like you're watching a storm come on your ranch where your livestock is about to die, and you're like some kind of I don't know, like you
Then you definitely don't own a truck.
you don't own a truck. Like this
Drive
is
a
like in
Prius.
like the 60s.
Oh, okay, I
something,
got you.
Something like that. But yeah, the 4 is moody as fuck. Like like I hate when people post online that they're like, oh, all my feels, it's just so hard for my partner, and it's not like that. It's just like, you like if you're sitting in a car next to a 4, it's like they're not sharing anything, but they're like tumbling through all kinds of dark, like dark oceans inside, and based on nothing that has anything to do with you, but it's like emanating, I think, from them, and they don't want to talk about it, but it's like so present that you're like, what's going on? And then they're like, I'm doing my thing right now, and it's this whole like leave me the fuck alone kind of feeling that they give
Yeah.
off.
Every time I've hung out with you, I've felt some form of that where I'm like, what's happening beside me? I don't know.
Yeah, it's just you're just getting the heat waves.
It's stressful.
I guess that'd be stressful for probably the attachment
Especially
types
at Bermuda.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like, because they're always looking outside to figure out how they should orient. So you got somebody over here who's in their own world being all smoldering and shit. And you're like, I don't know, what is it because of me? Is it something I
Right.
said?
Yep.
Yeah, it's like making the room melt because it's smoldering so intensely. But then you're like, what's wrong for? For is like, fuck off. Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, what's your problem? Because, whatever.
Like I'd have to explain it to you, and that's I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I'm
Go
not
through
I'm not
it.
doing it. Yeah. And then you have to and then you do explain it, like eventually they get you to explain it, and then you say stuff, and it's like so like the explanation itself is gonna make them feel so judged and like
Yep.
awful, and
Mhm.
like maybe just kill the whole mood for the whole night or whatever. It's like
Mhm.
it's
Yep.
like a toxic oil spill that just keeps spilling and spilling.
Mhm.
So yeah, anybody else want to shit on a 4?
So I had
Oh yeah, you had a thing with the 4, didn't you?
I had a thing with the 4. So I don't know how this is going to frame up or work to even talk about exactly, because my relationships are always so weird. I was dating a 6, okay, and the whole time that I was dating this 4.
Great.
What?
Okay. Got it. Check.
Okay, so
You were double dipping?
I sure was
What a simple.
for about 3 years.
The
Oh
good
my
old double
Oh my
dip
god.
for 3 years.
Wow, you kept that going, man.
So,
Good old double dip.
so here's a major part of it was this didn't even be that funny.
I've never heard David laugh like this. It's
Oh
cracking me
shit. So the 6 did not know about the 4, but the 4 knew about the 6. So that was part of what made it 4-ish, right? Was because the 4 knew the tragic truth of, that this was an illicit affair, right? And so it kind of fed her, 4 thing of it sort of being fucked up and broken or whatever, right?
Uh,
And she was SPSX, so and there was a really good sexual chemistry thing, and it really had the flavor of like 2 lovers meeting in a hotel kind of thing, where you have this just animalistic sex every time you get together, and it's because it is an affair. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it had that kind of energy to it. Anyway, at some point, I don't know what to say about the actual relationship. Um, I only just think about the sex. Let's see what
That's
else.
all that really matters.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
say none of us really care.
Well, so at a certain point, we just, I was not going to break up with the 6 apparently, and we decided to end it, me and the 4, and she apparently really liked me, and kind of collapsed into a 4 thing, right? And sort of, and it was, yeah, it was a vortex, and it was, hidden and not communicated, and she would kind of occasionally, give me some kind of aesthetic object, figuratively speaking, as a symbol, really, of, kind of what was going on for her, including some music and things like that. Yeah, she was just collapsed into herself and sort of couldn't tell me about it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. That symbol thing is like really understated or under not emphasized enough in 4.
Mhm.
Like in how people normally understand 4, that if the 3 is like the camera image on the self, 4 is like the symbolic, image on self, or it's like, instead of thinking about in terms of like and not in terms of like literal image or like how I look, but it's everything is symbolic. Everything is representative of something else. And it's right before you get into the head center where, as Courtney says, like, nothing is what it is for the heads type. It's like everything's representational, or, means something else. Like 4 understands themselves in the world and makes sense of things through symbol. And so everything has symbolic significance. And so, yeah, it's like talking about something like is not really, it doesn't really do anything. Or it's like you have to engage even like the mourning process like that symbolically.
Yeah, it was I don't know if there were even any tears, but she was obviously, just completely in there in that same space where there normally would be tears with
Hmm.
any other type. But yeah,
Hmm.
about the symbol thing, like one way to say it to me is like, I don't know if this is a good elaboration on what you're talking about, John, but like a fetish, like the literal fetish, or a talisman, like you
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's
exactly.
like it's like you're condensing emotional content into a very small space.
Yeah, yeah. Well put. Let's shit on some 5s.
Yeah.
Yes.
Corinna's terrible so far.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
this
Oh,
is
is pretty
awful.
bad.
thank you. Yeah,
I
thanks.
would hate to
Not
date
being a
her.
positive outlook type, I really appreciate that. So interviewing my partner of 15 years, the biggest thing that I sort of the theme that I could see is how hard it is to find a way to dock with your 5 if you're in a relationship with a 5. And I also want to say I'm not clear on whether we're just talking about what sucks to be a lover with a 5 or what sucks to be, sort of in any kind of situation with a 5, because there's a difference.
Oh, I think all sort of romantic, uh,
Romantic. Okay.
situations with that type and everything that we hate about it.
Okay. So this is like romantic sexual. Okay. From that interview, I learned some things that are embarrassing because after 25 years, you think you know all this shit about yourself. But I'll share that. So one of the things he was talking about in terms of how hard it is to dock with me is how like he has friends he's a 6 and he has friends he says shoot the shit with, right? And so he can go all over the place. He can be talking to his friend Dean about, I don't know, goofing around, right? And then maybe they get serious for a little bit and they goof around again. And so with me, it's not that easy flow. Like I don't go with the flow. I like he has to actually. He kind of says like the thing that stands out to me from listening to the 5 podcasts recently is they said it has to be on their terms. And I sort of have really not recognized how much things have to be on my terms in order to talk with me. But that's what he's saying. And he's basically saying he's always second guessing himself about what's going to put me off. And of course, he's a 6, so 6s do that. But it just demonstrates like, there's some way that he has to make sure that I'm on board with whatever he brings. Like I won't get on his train essentially, right? Unless it's
Mm.
just right for me. And so then part of that is what I call parsing. So it's not nixing his assertions altogether if he comes at me with something, but I'll come back with like, okay, but it's this, not that exactly. And then I'll just go launch into how it's not that exactly. And what he hears is like, not really. He hears basically a rejection of whatever he's saying. And what I think I'm saying is, yes, but, and of course, it doesn't sound like that at all to them. Anybody, it just sounds like, yeah, fuck you,
So you're
which,
just dissecting
I'm,
it.
yeah, I'm dissecting, parsing, I'm just kind of like, yeah, but let's unfold this, right? And so, but it's not that. It's a yes, but, and sort of like in the sense of, say, improvisational play, one of the first things you learn is yes and is important for, the kind of interaction that gets playful and is fun. And so, so I was really gaining a sense that when I'm in stress, I'm so not fun. And obviously, I don't think anybody's really just a great time when they're stressed, but yeah, it's just like this constant, like, I guess people might think of it as nitpicking, but nitpicking can also be rigid. This is just more like overly expansive and overcast with no.
It's That's funny to me, Karina, because I think one of the things that I miss most about hanging out with you is like how much we tell jokes and laugh. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So like, I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the massive fiveness in me or something, and the four in you or whatever. But yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, so like I said, it's just like when I'm stressed, it's just even harder to dock me. And once I feel like I had to learn to be like how to get on board with groups and in socially, essentially, because when I was a kid, it was always I was too much, right? The intensity, I had a lot of intensity. So I was too loud, learn that your voice carries, Karina,
Aw.
and so, or I was just intense. And I think that's one of the hard things about fives too, is their intensity. And they're not intense in the way, say, an eight is with will or control, but there's like a kind of a, like, sometimes you'll hear people say that fives seem arrogant or harsh, and certainly we can just say things bluntly and be harsh, but I think some of that just comes across because we're fucking relentless.
Mhm.
Yeah.
John, you described kind of like at the end of the five podcast, sort of like fives have a constant project of unfolding the dimensions of reality or whatever they're doing, right? It's
Yeah.
like whatever their focus is, it's like this is what life's about. And then for other people, it's like, yeah, there's a time and a place for that, but that's not how I want to live.
Right.
Like I'll do a
Right.
psychedelic journey sometimes, maybe, or I'll have a long conversation that's really deep with somebody every 10 years or something, whatever they do, but that's not fiveness. Fiveness is I'm going to delve, right,
Yeah.
constantly. So
Never,
there's a
never stopping.
relentless, yeah, there's a relentless and an intensity of delving that I think I'm a therapist largely because most people don't want to do that. And so now they pay me to do that with them. And so like some of my clients would describe me as a psychedelic drug, it's just like get on board with me and then we go there. But the thing is that can be really awful for the lover, that relentlessness, because there's like not a recognition of like the rest of what's going on. like their lives aren't that. And so, it has taken a while for people in relationship to that who are not fives to kind of learn how to live with somebody who doesn't have all these parts of life in a way, right? Who just has their project as their main life. If that makes sense, a project as a life. That's kind of what you were describing before,
Absolutely.
John.
Absolutely.
I could probably echo some of that with not having dated a five, but just having a five fix and noticing John has a five fix and a five wing as well, and this sort of over specific, intensely specific kind of intense focus on an interest. I mean, everybody has interests and hobbies, but like maybe you just in a conversation you casually mention it, but people that are fives or that have five fixes can just run a train on a hyper specific topic to the point of there's no way anybody else on planet Earth besides them would be able to keep up. Like
What it, what it
Right.
feels like for a five or five wing is like, it's not like you have a hobby or interest. It's like your life is the interest, and then everything else is
Yeah.
doing the bullshit to maintain the focus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So when you're with somebody who's a lover and they have these things that you think of as a bullshit, they're like, "This is not bullshit," like
This
I
is
mean,
part of my
kind of
life.
depending on the rest of the rest of their life, and so that's part of the issue of docking with a five is also, you know, like learning their map or learning my map, but also kind of being able to wave and say, hey, this map over here is totally valid. you know and I think that's also true with fives in a relationship with fives. Like there's a whole other map, there's a whole other version of what the focus is, what the thing to be intense about is, right?
I don't know if this is more 4 or more 5, but since we're talking about both, I experience this a lot when I'm talking to either Emika or John. When I'm like relating a lot
Watch
of
it,
what I
Nancy.
do, no, I will not. A lot
Careful.
of what I do to like exist with another person is try to relate to them because I'm a fucking 3. And so when I try to relate to Emika or John, they're always like, yeah, well, it's not quite that. Like, let me tell you. And I'm just over here like, God damn it. Like, I can never
separating.
get it right. And it's so frustrating because I'm over here like, I'm just trying to be friends with you.
It's almost like someone says something and I immediately see the holes in it. It's like I see everything that's not what they're trying, like what they think they're trying to say. And I have the
Mhm.
compulsion to say, no, it's not, that's not whatever it is you're saying, I'm not there. This is where it is. And it's like this sort of friction that happens.
And I'm just over here like a ragged, exhausted human, like, oh my God, I just wanted to relate to you.
Find some commonality.
I just wanted to find common ground. I didn't ask for this.
And the other part of it is that it feels like if I really wanted to, I'm not a 5, but line to 5 and 5 fix, I feel like I could continue doing that. Like they would never be common ground. I could always find
Mhm.
something that does not match about
Yeah,
what
it
you're
does feel
saying.
like you could always do
No,
that.
I mean, there's this sort of like I think for somebody with a 5 component, it feels like you're being really kind when you're like, yeah, that's in common. Like they're not. There's nothing in common, but you're sort of like giving it to them. Like you're
Yeah.
sort of okay. I'll let them have this one. And
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
It's like
that's
I'm
what
just
Art was saying I never do. So, that's what I'm calling parsing, where you basically like, no, no, well, it's not like this, So that's as diplomatic as I tend to be, is like when I'm in that mode, or a stressful version of that is like, oh, well, it's sort of like this instead. Let me explain it to you.
yeah, I've gotten better at saying adding little qualifiers before I just go on my train of, I don't want to invalidate what you're saying, but let me invalidate what you're saying.
Yeah. I wonder, Corinna, about touch and 5s. Like how in terms of relationship and stuff, like is touch
That's interesting.
an issue?
Yeah.
Well, so again, the phrase on my terms comes.
Mm.
So, like, again, the sort of docking, it's like it matters. It's not about, okay, so first of all, touch for me, has to be like so real. Like, you don't generate any kind of bullshit around me, don't generate like mood lighting. Shit, like, it's like,
No salt lamps.
I don't know, just, no, like, I don't know if you guys ever heard the brand Bread from the 70s, but there used to be sort of this television commercial called The Best of Bread, and they'd be like soft focus, a girl like who's really blurry blowing out a dandelion in the wind, and some awful music that was like supposed to be romantic but was totally nined out or whatever. So anyway, so that kind of thing, whatever the fake version of that is, I hate. And so that's part of, anybody who's going to get close to me knows that really quickly, right? Like, oh, to get close is to get real, in a way, is to touch what's here, who's here, like, and from who's there over there. So for me, if somebody is in that mode, then touch feels totally welcome. And I guess the only time it wouldn't be is if I'm absorbed in something, right? So I
Which
mean,
when are you not doing that?
well, yeah, but I can be absorbed because I love, I can be totally absorbed in interacting with him too. And so that's part of it, is to dock with me with touch, is like, I want to be engaged verbally. I'm very verbal, right? And so, but there are also times when, like, I hate body upkeep. This is part of my low self-pres. I mean, I hate repetitious things that you have to do over and over again to keep yourself going, And so, and being a 5, it's just like, so Art was saying, okay, maybe I don't eat or I don't drink water, or didn't used to sleep, I'd stay up all night, which again, investigating some shit all night, and then or I'd neglected basic hygiene, again. And which, that wasn't a problem when all we used to do was have sex in the beginning. That was all we did all the time, was had sex. So I didn't eat, but that was my project, right? And so we would be in like whole eras like that still over the last 15 years, but then there are other modes when I'm just completely in some other project, and I'm neglecting all of this for the sake of that, and then he comes in to be close or whatever, because we just generally spend a lot of time doing different things now, and then we just come in and dock with each other, and so he comes in to be close after a long time of not, and I have neglected all these things, and then I have to go take care of those things, because I realize I have a body, there, and then I was like, oh shit, I have to go to the bathroom, or I have to go do this or take care of that. And I said, so what's the matter with that? And he said, yeah, tell them that too. Yeah, that's problematic too, that you don't even get that that's a problem. So but so touch is also like, there's a rhythm and a way to come in that I think as a 6 he's really taught me a lot about, like how to catch his wave, right? How to catch the rhythm of the moving with him, because I was also super super self-conscious of my image in the beginning, like at the beginning of basically the first 35 years of womanhood or femalehood. And so touch also has made, like, the way that he comes in with me, I just feel so much less self-absorbed in some way. Like, I completely come out and have learned to follow the energy of what's happening into whatever it is, which is always the reason I like sex anyway, since young age, because I very young age, because I felt like you know that energy of what happens in the midst of touch would take whatever's possible here to an entirely different realm, and in other words, the energy that's involved in touch was just totally welcome to me. So once I'm in it, I really am in it.
Yeah, Joseph had thought about possibly coming on the call because he dated a couple fives. He told me that one of the things that was really jarring about fives is that they weren't reading him, so he always felt kind of, they can make him feel kind of alone, but
Mm,
they're also pretty intense and direct. I mean, these are men, so it's
mm,
like this thing where let's say like he described, like, let's say they're on the couch watching a TV show, or maybe it's like some like positive, nice TV show. All of a sudden, like, this guy that he's seeing is pulling his pants down, just sort of like there's no, it can be really jarring that the five isn't necessarily reading or getting in the flow of when
mm,
things might or should happen. Um,
mhm,
and so there's a little kind of like an autistic approach to,
mm.
like he said, the way he described it is that they don't have a game. it's it's like, just like, oh, we're interested in the same stuff. Let's meet up tonight. Or you like rough sex, and the next thing you know, you're being choked on the couch. Just like there's a sort of like a really autistic. It's
Like
not.
there's
There's
a
not a
concept of it, and this sort of, there's, instead of an actual translation, there's a concept that's moved into a thing that they imagined.
right in terms of like, uh oh, this is how something. This is how this works. Oh, you say you like this. All right, I'm gonna do that. Or we
Hmm.
have these common interests. Let's meet
Right.
up. There's sort of a
Yeah.
direct
A
intensity.
direct correlation between
Yeah.
this. You
Right.
like
Yeah.
this is.
Whereas a lot of other types might flow into it or talk their way into it or feel it out, where
Yeah.
Save
a
that for
five
birthday sex.
a five is going very directly into the thing that makes sense. Or
Yeah.
there's sort of like a, in the mental center, I guess it's like, well, 1 + 1 = 2. So you're interested in me, we're sitting next to each other, let's have sex. Or right now I'm in the middle of this like inappropriate, not necessarily the best time, but I think he made the example that the show Dexter, which I think the
Oh no.
characterization of that person is like, like a five-ish, very detached person, where they're
Is
just
that the
sitting there.
doctor who is autistic? Is
No.
that
The serial killer Dexter.
The
Oh,
serial
okay.
killer that kills people that are bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
It's
So
like
Okay.
it's
there,
like he supplements his like negative need to kill impulses by killing like bad guys or something.
But
I
it
guess.
kills them
Yeah.
in like really grotesque ways too. Like it's
Yeah.
not chill.
So
All
like
right.
they're just sitting on the couch, and next thing you know, he's going down on his girlfriend, uh, just like they were watching a Christmas show or something. And she was like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I wanted to have sex, so I started." And so it's like, that's sort of a five thing. Like what? Like they're
Okay.
not here
Here's-
with you, but they're just
Yeah.
doing the things.
Yeah, I think every 5, including myself, I've met has some kind of spectrum, autistic spectrum type of behavior somewhere. Mine doesn't happen to be an interaction in terms of like that, but I can say that like there have been times like what it reminds me of is my friends like we're in some kind of transition going somewhere and I keep a conversation going or I start talking about something in the middle of when everybody needs to have their attention on something else. So that's a kind of an autistic like I'm
Oh,
totally not paying attention to what
The
situation we're
surroundings.
in because I'm kind of like in my own context, right? But in terms of actually in terms of actually going from concept of, like rough sex to choking somebody, I don't relate to that. Yeah, I mean what you're saying, Emeka, sounds like a low sexual, honestly, or something like
Oh yeah,
that.
these
Or,
these guys were
like
sexual
Yeah.
last also.
so there's also this thing, I think this would relate to, I mean, even though five's one of the withdrawn types, there's also, along with the intensity and sort of relentlessness, there's an intentionality that is active. And I think, and that's part of it. I think when you're talking about Emeka with the kind of like little autistic thing there is there's a way that fives can catch the train of their own intentionality and then just drive it like a train, like
Yeah.
so oh, intention is rough sex. Oh, choke, like it's just how a person gets there, right? Because I mean you have to bypass a lot of shit to get there, but there is that complaint about fives, like, okay, they're driving a train and going in, and how does anybody catch on to that? Part of the intensity is like I was saying, like having a booming voice when I was a kid, but also I speed up, and people, like you said at some point earlier, like how do I ever catch up with that, like how do I ever get on that train? And then of course when I'm with nines in groups I had to be really sensitive, I've learned, because they'll end up blaming me for being left out, right? And so if I have something to say or if I take the group to a certain place, now I make sure that I draw people out, and weave in whatever their intentionality is, because they don't. A lot of people don't even realize they can have intentionality in space. They're just there going with the flow, right? And I
Huh?
say that about nines, but that's really about most of us. Most of us are more passive than we
Mhm.
realize, and myself included sometimes. But there is that kind of intentionality that can take up a lot of space, and I think eights face that too. Like how do I deal with the fact that I take up a lot of space and people are blaming me for that, but maybe eights don't care. They're blaming
Yeah.
I a fear type, and I get, I'm doing that stuff because I learned to do that stuff because I fear being blamed.
And that's a really great point, because that's something that Joseph mentioned. It's part of the experience that fives are withdrawn, but they're very. It can come off seemingly aggressive in terms of they know exactly what they want.
Yeah.
In the mental center, like they've already made up their mind, and they're so specific about their interests that if they show an interest in you, that hyper focus is now focused on you. So a lot of times people who think there might be fives are coming from the nine space,
Mm,
don't really understand the sort of intentional focus and sort of directness that having that sort of specificity about what they're interested in. And so when a five is interested in you, it's like, let's go, let's, there's not, it's not vague, it's so specific. And also it's like they're not easy people to get on board with either. So you
right.
can appreciate that if a five is interested in you, it's going to be pretty more direct than other types, just because they're very intentional about the things that they're interested in, which
Well,
might
right.
scare some people off.
Yeah, and that intentionality is mental, so it's really fast. It's coming
Hmm.
like this. And so then it pisses people off who are in their body, whether they're nine or not, because it's like, there's the rest of this reality going on, like, and like it's not all about your fucking head, So even if whatever's being discussed has a huge mental component, I mean, David I don't know if you're still on the call because you haven't really said much, and so I think of you because you're
I'm
somebody
just
that.
in my body over here.
But I mean, is that true for you, Dave? Have you been in a relationship with a 5? Like between the relentlessness and sort of the mental speed, is it hard that way for a 9?
I haven't been in a relationship with a 5. I've just
Mhm.
had, semi friendships, kind of online folks. Let's see. I'm trying to think if there's, yeah, I don't think I've had any real life 5 friends, all online and so forth. 5 is weird. I mean, it's interesting to do that contrast because, like, the way I do the Enneagram is by sort of being with the types in my body, right? Like that's how I find them
Mhm.
and understand types, is to incorporate them. And it's some kind of abstract intuitive process or whatever, but 5, of course, is the type that you really can't do that with very well, right? it's
Mhm.
it's the worst one to try to bring on board to your body, because, like,
Mhm.
it's got a quality about it that's sort of severed at the head or something.
Mhm.
It's Anyway, it's interesting.
Mhm.
The one thing that I was going to ask about 5 is, has your partner complained about some inability to meet him emotionally?
So you're asking about like, but what your question was about how
Well, the stereotype is 5s are detached emotionally. They blah
yeah.
blah blah. And I wonder if there's anything to that. Is that a thing that your partner has complained about? I don't know. Just wondering.
Yeah, what he says is I get into modes, where it's like sometimes it's easier to dock with me that sometimes my moat is larger than other times. And if I'm doing something that's not in my body, that's one thing. But I've also gone through eras of my life where I'm really not in my emotions. And
Mhm.
that's I gotta say, as a 5, one of the biggest learnings for me is that the farther away from my emotions and my body for that matter I am, the less healthy I am. Okay. So
Mm.
and really for me especially emotions are a key. Like if I don't get in contact with those and express them to completion and in some healthy way, then then I'm just a ball of everything that's the worst about a 5. Okay.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's a lot of why I thought I was a 4 for the first 10 years of sort of personal growth shit, was because I was just like, it was like an elastic band. It was just horrible. Like every time I would have emotions, it would be a mess because most of the time I was out of touch with them, right?
Mm.
So yeah, I'd say my first husband would complain about how I would be so out of touch and then explosive, right? That's the way I think he would describe it.
That's interesting. All right, I think we've sufficiently illustrated how terrible 5 is.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I could help. Always here to help.
We got to make sure that we 6s and 7s are going to want a lot of abuse, so we can't hold back.
Well,
Okay.
I think there's plenty of people, plenty of energy to shit on 6s here.
Yeah. Well, I'm saying that specifically for 7 because we tend to like.
Not give 7 enough.
Yeah, they're gonna need extra.
Yeah, they've been
Yeah.
sliding for decades, man.
Yeah.
They have been.
Everybody thinks being a 7 is just the thing to be. Like that, as if that's some sort of enlightenment.
It's
So
not,
yeah.
baby.
It's not.
Baby.
Yeah.
We're taking
But
you
6
down,
is
babies.
6 is easy to shit on.
Yeah. 6 will shit on themselves.
He was actually so Karina's in a relationship with a 6. Who else has dated a 6?
Well,
I have.
everyone is hooked
I've
up.
never
or
been with a 6.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think I've dated a 6.
Yeah, I haven't dated a 6 for, but I've hooked up with.
I haven't dated a 6, but yeah, I have hooked up with them.
I'm a 6 specialist.
He's got
So tell us what that
extensive.
means. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, what does that
No,
mean, David?
That means I know how to fight with them really well. No.
Do you? Do
I
you? I beg to differ.
I'm in my 6 is a textbook sort of sexual self-pres, really low social, counterphobic as shit 6. But
What do you
he's
hate about him?
counterphobic, like as in react against everything, in this giant counterphobic way. But he's also was a firefighter, so he's counterphobic in the sense of run right towards that shit.
What's the
How's
most
that
difficult?
annoying?
Yeah, what's the shit aspects?
What's the shitty aspects? Let's see what sucks about it. Okay, sixes can kind of use humor as a way to get out of anything, and I think when he's scared, he flees a lot, and but he finds a way to get out. So humor is a way he can escape, right?
Hmm.
And he kind of I guess it's an aspect of being phobic too, to escape. But basically, he can be what he calls a slippery fish,
Yep.
and that drives me crazy. So he'll move out of things, like he'll defocus my focus and try to control my relentlessness by slipping out into some other thing in some way that I notice, but it kind of like that's not even worth it, because by the time you're done grabbing a slippery fish, right? Like if you're catching a fish and it keeps slipping out of your hands, like fuck it, it's not worth it anymore. And so they kind of wear you down by slipping away.
Yeah.
Um, let's
Yeah, I would
see.
say the sixth thing is a lot of not knowing, like this sort of unspecified anxiety about things. So to sort of get clarity, they'll push
Mhm.
into one side, which generally means I'm the problem or I'm being accused of stuff that they're not even sure of. It's sort of like, stabbing in the dark. Because then you're sort of, as a reactive type, they're forcing you to react to this sort of accusation or thing that they're worried about. So you have to, like, in order to correct it or to say that that's not true, you have to sort of be reactive. And so, a six will just
Mhm.
create conflict through that sort of head type. I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to accuse you, or I'm going to start some shit type of thing that they're doing, and it can be exhausting. But it's, and the head center is, because it's the head center, it's nonstop and it's constant and it's fast. It's
Oh,
like
right. Uh-huh.
like it's like, oh, you this is gonna happen, and you're like, no, it's not gonna happen, or you kind of walk through it, or you did this. I thought you did this. I felt that you did this, and you're like, no, actually, this is what I did. And then it's just like, well, blah blah blah, and then you're just like, we just like spent 15 minutes fighting about some bullshit that you were worried about. Shut the fuck up.
You know,
So the worry drives you crazy.
Well, it's like, you can be worried, but just like leave me out of it. Once once you start like making shit up about what you think I might have done, or you think that you heard somebody said I might have done, or you feel that I'm doing, it's like, I have a problem when things aren't factual, because it's like, if it's coming out of your mouth and it has to do with me, you better fucking make sure that what you're saying is true. And if it's not, then yeah, we have a problem.
Mm.
this is so like I said, I've never been in a romantic relationship of any kind with a six, but I have a sixth brother and a sixth sister.
All right.
And what this is reminding me of, that it's like dawning on me, that probably I've never heard articulated elsewhere, but it's probably very frustrating to anybody in a relationship with a six, is that as a super ego type, they often have very strong ideas about what X or Y relationship should look like or be like.
Mm.
So, like, just to give an example, with my brother, like, we don't like talk much or something, but then he might reach out to me and I'm shitty, so I like don't respond very well, and then he'll text me or call me and give me a lecture on how I should be a brother and show up and blah 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 blah. And it's like a whole sort of litany of complaints based on his super ego sense of what X relationship or Y relationship ought to look like.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I've experienced that. I've also, as a nine, also with sixes, there's a lot of, an undercurrent of, why aren't you reacting as much as I am to this thing, this stimuli? I mean, like, I had one six, we had a incredibly healthy relationship where she would yell right in my ear, to try to get me to just react. I'm teasing, of course, about the healthy part. I mean, that was actually like a really intense relationship where we hated each other. But that was what the whole relationship was based on, was hating each other. And yeah, I mean, she would literally yell at the top of her lungs right into my ear, because I was being so non-reactive and still. And she was the kind of person who was super nervous, the kind of person who would like imagine that she's hearing termites in her walls and stuff, and just all of those kinds of just fearful, panicky things, and thinking that her world is crumbling around her, kind of stuff. So anyway, that's one of my 6 stories. Most of my long-term relationships have been 6s, but they've all been really different 6s, every one of them. Also, I've got my girlfriend right next to me, Alex, who's a 9, and so it's really awkward talking about all my old relationships.
Is she next to you right now?
She's right next to me with her head on my shoulder. She can't hear any of the conversation, so it's I just thought I'd throw that in because it's good comic relief, but it's true. She's here.
One of the things that has driven me nuts about 6s is when there's sort of a, I don't know if this is part of being a compliant type or, well, no, I don't think so, because this is 6 particular. So putting in a pedestal and then knocking your shit off. Right?
Oh,
So
yes.
both of them
Yeah.
suck. Like on a sort of like neither one of them are relating, right? But I also think it's not like every moment that that's happening is invalid. I've had clients who are 6s, and I've watched them go through the process of, because with a therapist, there's sort of that, oh, like, you're great, you're helping me. And no matter how much you try to say, okay, well, but you're your own person, and you're creating this for yourself or whatever. Any way you try to put that back on them, that's not really going to work. So you can expect that there's going to be some point where they're going to refuse all of it and go into this whole other life, sort of this Bob Dylan, like, no, I'm a Christian after all, whatever it is. It's like a whole flip onto another reality, right? And so that's one of the things I've learned to deal with. But it's also like an art's done version of that. Like, I'm a photographer. No, I hate photography. I'm gonna sell all my equipment.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. That's a big issue with 6s that I think we've talked about. Courtney on the call here, she's talked about how like 6s will just give their power away to someone else, but eventually they swing back. It's not completely, but eventually, even if they're giving you authority and influence, they're constantly testing you, and at some point they might just go, no, you're shit. Like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
so it's like, I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you to give me any sort of authority in your life. This is something you just did all by yourself.
Right. And then there's
you
that
know,
internal blame, right? Like, regardless. Yeah.
so yeah,
Like they're
that
gonna
is
blame you for it.
right. Yeah, they're gonna blame you for taking up space in their life that they gave you.
Yeah.
I mean, they made space for you and themselves that you didn't take up. That's annoying.
Yeah, like Art left for we went through all this stuff, and kind of resolution finally happened, and then he's like, you know what, I just got to take a year on my own and just travel. And I was like, wait a second, we just go through all this. What are you saying? And I hadn't realized the extent to which he was sort of kind of hanging in there and doing the loyalty thing.
Hmm.
um, and the extent to which he didn't really feel like he had his own authority over his life. And of course, at that point, I was like, well, are you going to commit to come back? He said, no, I can't do that. That would be, beside the point. Like, if I did that. And so I was like, great, well, see you then. I'm going to go get in a relationship with somebody else, and he's like, great. So, I mean, eventually he came back around, and he's like, no, I really want to be in a relationship with you, but it's like, Jesus Christ. But that's an example, right? Like, kind of going in these really intense different directions.
Yeah, that's the other thing. It's just, 6s can be really erratic, and sort of like the way I think you mentioned that you can't pin them down, with like 9s are really hard to sort of grasp, and that's like in the body center, but 6s are doing that same thing in the head center, where it's like they can be really erratic in terms of their viewpoints, decisions, like going back on themselves, being contradictory. There you go. Like, being contradictory is an element of 6ness that can be really frustrating. Yeah, it's just built in.
But one of the modes I think 6s can get into is being in their heads. And when they're in their heads, like, sort of philosophizing or doing something that's like a logical, sort of procession of things. And it's not logical at all. It's a little bit like when ones have their idea of certain things that are right, and they have the reasons why. And as a 5, I can dissect all those reasons. But with a 6, I mean, used to be Art would like go drinking, and then he'd have all these ideas about how the world is. And it's like, to me, there's just one of the things I like that Russ Hudson talks about is that there's a way for head types to be online with an actual headspace. And then there's just all the crap we do in our head when we're actually not online with that, which I think sixes are a great exemplar of for Candy.
Oh, the other thing, I guess, with being attachment types, and there's a thing with sixes staying, complaining about a situation, but staying in that situation,
They don't help
leave-
themselves.
Right. And like I've seen this happen with my closest friends are sixes in the romantic space, where it's like you're having a problem with this person and you're complaining about it and you have all these problems, but you're staying in it and justifying, like, I'm doing things the right way. Why isn't this working? I'm like, you could just leave. You could just end it. But it just, staying in relationships, but still just complaining and accusing, but it's a way to sort of keep the bond going.
And it's attachment, right?
Yeah.
As in attachment type. Yeah.
So I think my partner who's a 9, I think is a 962. Right, David? I think we went with 962.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So the sacrificial lamb, and that 6 loyalist is just the shit when it's focused on the wrong thing, man. Like, he was at this job for 11 years and they just trampled him every single day, and it was like watching a person in a abusive relationship just keep going back to the person who literally just gives them head injuries. Like, you're like, why would you do that? And they're like, because I have to. And it's like, no, you don't have to. And there's just this have to ness. This is a duty. It's a duty, and it just
And
there's never any duty. You can always do whatever the fuck you want to do.
And the thing about that, that's part of the literature that a lot of sixes will read and say, I don't do that, but it shows up in their in their lives in subtle ways. Like, you're not like literally a slave, but there's a way that sixes will do duty to certain situations or certain relationships, and just stay in them, even though they're not, it's not working for them, and it's something that they complain about constantly.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you still in that? So in a way, we talk about 9s who sort of stuck in their, like, sixes are doing can do a similar thing with their style of attachment, and just being stuck in a pattern that supports them or supports something that they don't want to let go of.
Yeah, that sense of duty can really just like plow through every other sense of logical reasoning.
Yeah.
There's something in the masochism too that's part of the sexual relationship sometimes.
Yeah.
Something about that, quality about sixes that is sort of sacrificial, that it's like they want to be broken, and that comes into the bedroom too.
No,
I don't know if that's
I don't know about that.
I don't know if that's a terrible thing, Dave.
No, it's not. It's not at all. Yeah, that's true. I guess I forget we're doing terrible things. I keep forgetting. Focusing on the positive.
Sixes are wanting to be whipped by daddy.
I think I slept with the wrong 6. Shit, who are we talking about?
Spank me, daddy. That's the new name for six.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. I definitely slept with the wrong 6.
Yeah.
Me too.
I could
Right?
introduce you to a few.
Perfect. I've never been a dominatrix. I want to try it out.
And a lot of times I feel like that complaining aspect is sort of like, at least, in terms of my dynamic with sixes, is like they're looking for some like gut energy, some solid energy that's just going to shut them up. Like, like settled, like ground them in sort of, because they're just going all over the place, just like rattling. And like they need someone who's going to be like, ground them in reality and be like, no, you're full of shit,
Yeah.
that sort of a thing, like bring you down to earth.
I think it's I always view 6s as like the normal. Like, they're just the normal guy or gal. Like, I don't know if you guys ever watch SpongeBob, but like when SpongeBob
No,
got all
we're adults, Nancy.
sorry. But well, someone's gonna get it. I'm not just talking to you guys. Jeez. When SpongeBob got all of his edges smoothed out, and he just was walking around, he's like, "Hi, I'm normal." Like that's a 6 to me. And so
Yeah.
you're just like,
But
"Hey,
there,
how are ya?"
what so that one of the difficult things about for me about that with a six lever is this sort of like you want to, like, if I say, wow, look at this way, you're magnificent, or I'm really, I toss that in his direction, there's a six compulsion to be, no, 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 I'm a normal guy.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
no, 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 you just no. And so there's this out of hand like swatting away, because there's just such an attachment to being that normal guy, sort of like the
Yeah.
Bruce Springsteen, I'm going to wear regular clothes even though I'm a giant mega rock star
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I have to be normal.
Right, right. I have to
Duty,
be.
Accepted.
being normal.
Well, and maybe that's an attachment, have to be, like I'm
Mhm.
attached to this particular, and I think there's a certain way sixes do image in that sense. Like they do their ego like an image in a sense, like I'm a normal guy, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, some concept.
There's also normal in the sense of I'm not crazy, because sixes are kind of worried that they're crazy.
Yeah, they're
Right.
always kind of worried they're gonna lose his mind.
So are
He's
all of
gonna
us. We're all
snap.
worried about that.
Well, and for some reason,
Too
Art's
late.
worried about being seen as social. Like he really is attached to this idea that he's and kind of proud of himself being like,
Mm.
that he's way more social than he gives himself credit for. And sure enough, he'll be on his own a lot, but he kind of like wants that loner guy thing. That's what I mean. It's sort of a image that
Cute.
he's likes, and he kind of is sort of he's attached to it.
It's cute.
It is cute, but it's also like, there's something edgy for me at least about somebody hanging on to a thing about themselves,
Mhm. Oh, no, that's totally like
That's
attractive.
funny.
That's yeah.
That's edgy for a 5 is attachment.
Yeah, right. Like,
Aw,
what
someone
is this
thinks
thing
we're
that
edgy.
you have to be this solid thing? Like, why do you have to think you're this concept and then be it and then have that override reality? I don't understand. When there's
That's
all this other
hilarious.
evidence that you're not that. Yeah.
I'm so glad someone finds that edgy because we're over here just living in hell.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I think we've hit 6 pretty
Yeah.
well. We need to bring the big guns out for 7 because those motherfuckers want the pain.
They deserve it.
I've dated sevens. I've dated sevens more so than any type. So
Oh, I don't think I've ever dated a 7. So
I got a lot. Lost my virginity to a 7.
yeah,
I did too, actually, now that you mention
What?
that. Yeah.
The same
I mean-
7 getting around.
50 years ago?
What I hate about sevens is that the positive type outlook, they just think they're the shit. And so the impulse that I have is to just constantly shit on them, constantly shit on them, because it's like, it's just impossible that you can think that highly of yourself and things in general. Like just like things are going to be great. Like it's fun. Like it's a fun thing, but it's also kind of like unrealistic. So it's like trying to bring them down to earth. Yeah, sevens are also kind of compared to other types. Well, maybe not compared to my type, but generally selfish. They want to have a good time, which can come across like, it's sort of like a party person, like sevens are a fun time, but not all the time is a fun time. It's like grow up. And in a way, it's not necessarily, of course, there are plenty of mature sevens and blah, 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 but the attitude that sevens have can come off not serious, a lot of times, where because they don't really want to deal with anything that sucks.
Yeah, emotional realness is hard with a 7 to be put it mildly, just because there's the emotion, the intensity of the emotion that 7 doesn't want to really feel. And then there's at least when they're in it, right? And then there's the realness that they don't really want to be
Yeah.
in that part of it either, right? So like I don't want to face the thing and I don't want to feel the thing. So then where do you go?
Yeah. When it's low commitment, everything's great. Like it's just fun. And you don't really get too deep into anything. That's the other thing that sucks about 7 is, I mean, there's some 7s that have depth, but the personality structure of 7 is not conducive to depth. Because it's like when you're moving so fast and things are interesting, you can you can taste a lot of different things. There was one girl I started to see who I realized was a 7, and she was really into like metaphysics, and which was interesting. Like she was into all this sort of inner work modalities, and so we were talking about the Enneagram, and she seemed like she was, on board. I realized I was getting really annoyed that she was interested in all these, like, oh, she'd like hit me up and say, oh, I read this article that said, you burn this sage and you do this thing and you say this chant and it's supposed to like, do this thing for you. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Can you tell me more about that? It's like, oh, no, no, no. I just read this article and I did it today. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the next day she'd call me about like some other like metaphysical thing, potion that she had found and that she had done. And I'd be curious. I'd be like, oh, so like, what's that supposed to do? Like, where does that go? I'm curious about, like, tell me more about how this thing works. He's like, no, no, no. I just like, I just checked it out and I tried it and it's really interesting. Blah, blah. So sevens can just like taste things, but they don't really, I call it the airhead syndrome.
Saturate.
Yeah, I call it the airhead syndrome. It's like, you're interested in a lot of different shit, but like personality of ADHD, where it's like, I don't want to get too deep. Because if you get too deep, you might run into stuff that's not interesting. It's interesting to sample a lot of different things. So
I know an 8-wing 7. She's actually my mother. And
So you know her pretty well.
I know her pretty well. One of the most frustrating things that comes from her 7-wing is, and possibly some of the 8, but it's mostly the 7-wing, is whenever I come up with an issue, there's always a solution. There's always a solution.
Mm.
Sometimes I don't want a solution. I
You
just
just
want to
want to
crawl in.
complain.
Yeah, I just want to crawl into bed and complain and pretend there isn't a solution. But there's always a way around it. Fuck that.
skip over the problem.
Exactly. I want to sit in it and sulk.
I've known some sevens who will like be in a shitty relationship or situation and they'll stick with it too long in a weird way that's like a counter to their usual habit. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I
Mhm.
always bounce, so I'm gonna stick with this. It's the shittiest thing I could stick with. But I'm gonna stick with the shittiest thing possible. Where it's like the good thing, it's like, oh, I'm gonna bounce out. But the shitty relationship or whatever, I'm just gonna plow through because it's like they're moving to one. It's like I'm doing the right thing or something like that.
I'm doing
Yeah.
the work, but the work
it-
is in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's almost always in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's applying that positive outlook to really shitty situations. I've definitely noticed that where a 7 will be in a toxic relationship and somehow they've justified it to themselves that it's a lot better or it has potential to change. And that's another thing about not just 7s but positive outlook types, is that there's an over assumption that things have potential to grow and evolve more so than they can. Like there's an avoidance of the reality of the shittiness of a situation by imagining that things are going to be dramatically better and being hopeful about that. So a lot of 7s will just stay in really fucked up dynamics based on the idea that things are going to turn out better and that you have to believe in the possibility and be hopeful that that's going to happen.
You just have to believe. That's a 7 saying if I've ever heard one.
You
Look on the
said
bright side.
your mom is an 8 with 7 wing. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay, because I have a friend who is an 8 with a 7 wing, and one of the things that my 6 partner will tease about and still jokes about after like decades later is that he would say like she would be, and this is her 7 wing, it's got to be, she would be excited for somebody if like they just lost their legs in a train. She would be like, oh my god, that's so amazing. Like,
Now you get to learn what life is like without legs.
Possibilities for you now, like your life's gonna be epic now.
Oh my god, yes.
So this kind of cheerfulness or optimism that sort of like completely attempts to blast over, whatever, which, for a 6 is like, come on, man, be with my pain.
That is the best description of an 8-wing 7 that I think I've ever heard. Like
So-
if I ever have a real issue, it's always like I'm not bringing it to my mom first because I'm always going to hear, well, now, oh my god,
Right. Right.
I don't want to.
So one thing about 7s that like my first girlfriend was a 7, and I think that 7s give a hard time with emotional discomfort than 9s. Like
Mhm.
that they'll
Mhm.
just peace out and that they'll sort of work things through in their mind, but have not processed anything emotionally.
Mm.
And so there's just this like weird slipperiness. It's like you're like trying to address something, and it's because it's got so much backlog. It's like a nine piecing out, but like much more color and flavor. So it's almost distracting, and it kind of
Mhm.
obfuscates the whole issue.
Yeah, it's like they can talk about it, but there's no emotion behind it. And it's like, what? Like they can say the saddest thing. They're like,
Mm.
"Oh yeah, I was beaten as a child and stuck in a basement for 5 years alone." But what is life? And it's like, "What?
What?
Whoa."
Yeah.
It's like, are we not gonna no? Okay.
And the other thing about seven is this emotional thing that when they do emotion, it's sort of like theatrical. It's like a show.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And like my most emotional relationships have been with threes, counterintuitively somehow. Because I feel like with sevens that I've been with, they have the capacity to be emotional, but sevens can make a show out of it. Like maybe they're sad, but it's like really amplify uh sadness so that you can see it and notice it, make a spectacle out of it. But I never really felt, because there's a sort of this speed with moving on to the next thing. It was just difficult to really saturate emotionally with the seven. And so yeah, the which, if for me as an eight, really enables my own sort of lack of connection to the heart. So like seven relationships were really easy. So it's not
You
really
just never talk about emotions.
yeah, because like neither of us are really going to go there. But if I did want to go there, the seven wouldn't be the person to really make room emotionally in that sort of way. Like they wouldn't meet me there, so we would just enable each other's patterns in terms of just avoiding difficult stuff.
So what I heard there was that threes are the most accomplished with being emotional, and I love that.
So you missed all the shit that I was talking
Yeah.
last
No,
week.
I just heard that threes are emotional and they're really good at it. So we should get an A plus.
Threes are the best.
Yeah, they're
Give me an A
gonna
plus.
in just that one category.
Yes. Yes, please. I'll take my report card now.
My first long-term girlfriend, the one I lost my virginity to, was a seven. We dated
Wow.
about a year and a half.
All three of
And
us started our sexual careers with sevens.
looks like it, yeah. So like we had a good relationship, but the big complaint that I had was, I mean, this was back when I was 17, and it was like extreme party days, right? And like people's, keg parties at people's parents' house when they're out of town and all that shit, right? And
The roaring 20s.
oh yeah, the Roaring Twenties. It was that far back.
Great Depression.
yeah.
World War One.
And she would do. I mean, I think this was a seven move of flirting with my friends and needing to see
Oh.
that, needing to see, like really blatantly too. I mean, it was really assertive, like, and needing to see that they dug her, you know, and that she had, options, right?
Yeah.
And that she was like the queen and all that kind of stuff.
Big slut
Yeah,
energy.
yeah, big slut energy, and it was brutal too. I can remember, after that happened, a number of times. I can remember one time being really drunk, and I was in that, that kind of. I would usually be a happy drunk, but this was one of those crying drunk times,
Oh
and I
damn.
Oh
and I
no.
had all of her little friends around me consoling me because she had gone like hardcore into flirtation mode one night at a party at her own house because it was her own turf. So she was really going to be the queen bee. And so, I had all these little 16-year-old girls around me consoling me of,
Yeah.
it's kind of a hilarious little scene. That
Man,
was when I
sevens are
was.
the worst. The
Oh yeah,
worst.
no, that was brutal. I mean, she had put the moves on like all my friends. She needed to see that all of my friends were into her sexually.
That's another thing about sevens, the narcissism. I mean, you could say that about all the assertive types, but like just needing to be cool, needing to be interesting and liked, and like there's a
In
lot of
control.
there's a lot of cockiness around their
yeah.
interestingness and their appeal, likability.
It's sort
and
of
that
a bullying way of controlling, right? Like a way of pushing others into a sort of a space of subordinates somehow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sevens thinks they're too cool for school. They think they're the coolest person at the party. And that's why I will always shit on sevens, because they deserve that and more and more.
Partly
That's
my
interesting.
7 fix. It's my 7 fix that makes me occasionally say something really cocky, and then you guys have to shoot me down.
You know, sevens are the most scary to me in a way. I used to kind of feel like threes were the most like, oh, I don't know what to do with that deceit. But sevens, I'm not a moral person, so it's not about like right, wrong. But sevens, the seven I'm thinking of in particular right now, she'll go into these places of. She basically says, "I have this whole evil streak and I love it." You know, talk about evil characters in stories that she really relates to and everything. And there's just something as she reveals, it's almost like a serial killer starting to tell you about their exploits. You know, like in her mind, she's that evil, and it's sort of like, wow, okay, and maybe it's her connection to the evil and good in one or something, but it's like if you were, you know, so a serial killer telling you about their stuff is going to be like beyond good and evil. It's like, oh,
it's like the
Please
Joker.
get rid of all your knives.
yeah, the Joker, right?
Yeah, it's like, you know, like being the villain that enjoys being the villain, just shameless about it.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
like
the Joker a 7?
Entertained by it. Entertained by it. Too.
Entertained, right? There's that kind of like when a cat's playing with a thing that's still alive, and you're like, oh, that's still alive, but you're just having a really good time, and that's all that matters to you. It's a really good time.
It's fascinating to them to be like their own character becomes fascinating to them. You know,
Right.
it's like it's like I am playing a character and like, whoa, look at all this. Like there's that mental, there's the emotional detachment mixed with that. Ooh, this is a whole other thing.
Right. Yeah, it's like positive type doing being a bad guy or a bad girl, because like when an 8 is being bad, it's sort of coming from a place of I'm already, you know, we're all separate and I'm already rejected. So I'm expecting that. Where sevens think that they can be bad and you're still going to like it. They expect you to like it. There's shameless cockiness about that, where this is still entertaining and I can get away with whatever I want.
Yeah,
wow, that's creepy.
It is. But you're right. It's sort of the jokery thing. Like, oh, I'm going to be super creepy and like lay that on you now.
Enjoy.
Kevin Spacey. He's a 7.
also
If those who are listening.
Also, I think sevens, I think what's hard about sevens though is also their sensitivity. Like you don't see it because what's forward is this whole other thing, like you're talking about the assertiveness and the narcissism, but there's also this kind of, the reason they're not dipping down into their emotions is because it's so intense for them, right? And so like when you learn to coach a 7, it's about like allowing them, it's providing them an ability to just dip down into a little bit and then come back up, and dip down in a little bit again and come back out, you know, because they can't sustain the intensity of the experience, partly because they just aren't familiar with it, right? So it's like constant chalkboard sound, and you just have to stop it for after a while. So but I think that the thing is that they're so sensitive, and so the hard thing is to get into that depth and to kind of feel what allows them to relieve that sensitivity a little bit or something, you know. But I think like it's great when they can get into that, but really hard when they're right on that slippery edge.
So 7s are flaky, unemotional, villains.
I hope everybody after listening to these 2 episodes feels terrible about their type.
Yeah. Hopefully we got you. Hopefully we made you feel like shit. So
Fingers crossed.
All right. Thank you very much, Corinna, for being on with us.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
It was very illuminating.
Yeah, I feel like shit. It's great.
Great. That's what we go for here.
You almost met our standards.
But not quite.
Not quite.
All right. Night, guys.
All right. Night, everybody.
Night.
Night.
about what you are about, what's hidden